We're here on July 20th, 2016 at Renfrew Museum and Park with Charlie Bell. Charlie, welcome to Renfrew.
Okay. Hello.
Charlie, tell us a little about the donation that you've given, you and your wife.
It's about 140 pieces. It's everything from pottery to wheels to stone mill wheels to even a little book, like an address book that Ashby, I believe, was the one that used it for a ledger, who owed who, and had the recipes for all the glazes, and it also told of the kilns that we have or had, and there was actually 3 of them, and one of them was a dome kiln, round dome kiln, and that one had 32 flues. So it was a big operation that they had, and I wanted to give it to a museum, and so that the stuff could be seen. I talked to one museum, and they was going to keep a couple of pieces and sell the rest off. And I walked into the Renfield, and we got to talking and told them that story. And Dade went and said, "We'll take it." And so we went from there, and they came down and just about didn't believe what all they saw. I think it was in 1958. Dad decided to sell the home place in Strasburg, and I was only 10 years old at the time, and I didn't want to lose the home place. But it was too much work for Dad to keep up and keep rented and all that good stuff. But I helped him unload the house. We moved everything in a pickup truck from Strasburg to Timberville, and he left a lot of stuff there. That just went with the house, all kinds of antiques. He wanted to bring the pottery to Timberville. The only problem that he had was that he kept the stuff in a open metal building, and a lot of stuff got ruined over the years. And then the other way that we added to the collection, when I got my driver's license, Dad and I would go over on Route 11. He'd go one way and I'd go the other. And we'd see who could bring back the most pieces. Well, we'd bring back a couple of pieces each. I usually won the contest. I could spot them easier than he could for some reason. When I was a little kid, when they had on Route 11, all the antique stores, they put apple boxes out front with a board across and set the pottery up on that. And as we was driving by, I'd say, "Hey, there's a piece of Bell Pottery, Dad." And sure it is. And he stopped to check one day, and lo and behold, it was a number of pieces of Bell Pottery there. But that was when you could get milk crocks, gallon milk crocks, for $1, $2, $3 at the most.
And what year was this approximately?
Let's see, I was 16, so 56, around 65, 66.
Okay. So you're talking about Strasburg, Virginia, which is where your family lived.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about the Bell family and their genealogy, the history, and also how that's connected to the Bell family here in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania.
They started here in Waynesboro and gradually moved south. Strasburg was their last stop. Samuel and Solomon went to Winchester, and then for some reason they moved on to Strasburg, just a few miles down the road, and started a large pottery. Strasburg got to be known as Pot Town because of all the potters that were there, and virtually all the potters worked for the Bells, and then started their own business. And so they had potters coming out their ears there.
So they actually started in Pennsylvania then and moved southward. Mm-hmm. What's your relationship, if you know, to John Bell, who had the shop here in Waynesboro?
Let's see. So I'm not sure about this. I think Samuel and Solomon was his sons, and the family they sort of split up, but they still stayed in contact with each other. From what I've read, the Bells were the most influential potters in the nation. They was always trying new things and doing things, and but they corresponded with each other. So any new thing that they came up with, they would tell all the rest of the family about it, and that kept them a step ahead of all the competition. Okay, there's someone in Baltimore would bring English pottery down to Strasbourg, and my grandfather, Charles Forrest, would make molds of the English pottery, and then make their own dogs. One is their own pieces. The Staffordshire dogs, which are the Bell Spaniels, was one of them. But there's lots of water pitchers or milk pitchers that were done, spittoons. Granddaddy would make molds of them and then start selling those things. Most of that was earthenware, and that was how they could get that multi-glaze that we're so famous for. It was by making it earthenware, because when you do it in stoneware, the colors go crazy. My favorite piece is what my dad called the lost art, and he supposedly got that from my granddaddy. Okay. And I still have the original piece that they made the mold from. But it's got a goat's head for a spout, a snake crawling up a stick handle, a swamp around the bottom, an oak tree around the top, and then cranes in a scene on each side. Got to thinking that Dad needed to make a piece, and I kept after him to make one, and he just wouldn't do it. I guess the thought was talking about it was better than actually doing it. Right. And so he, and since I couldn't get him to do it, I started calling him the missing link. Okay. Because we have a direct line of at least some Bell in the family was making was a potter, and Dad was broke the chain. Mm-hmm. So I even offered to Dad, I'll make a piece, you sign it. No, I'm not going to do that either. And so then finally, I have 3 daughters, and my oldest daughter wanted to do some pottery, and with the molds, and I told her, go get Granddaddy. And Martha had this thing that she could roll her big brown eyes up at you, and you couldn't say no to her. So I sicked her on Dad. And Dad actually made a couple of pieces that he actually made and signed, and that made me happy, and she got to be a little closer with Martha, and Dad thought the world of Martha. So that's okay. Back when Dad was growing up, he was in his 20s or maybe his 30s, and the pottery wasn't worth anything. They couldn't give the stuff away. And so it was sitting all over the place in Strasbourg, and Dad needed something to use for targets. So he got out his .22 and jugs and went to target practicing. And I always thought that was just a story that Dad told. And when I was gathering the stuff up to give to Renfield, I found a jug that I picked up, and the bottom fell off of it. Well, it had some holes in it, but I never thought anything about it. But when I looked inside, you could see where a bullet had shattered the back side of the wall of the jug. Yeah. And so I said, so Dad was telling me the truth.
Well, you had talked earlier about the molds, and that's a really distinctive part of this collection, are the molds from the Bells. Tell us a little bit about those and the history and what you're planning to do with the molds. When I was getting interested in pursuing pottery more than just looking at it, I got some clay and made a slip out of it and started using them.
And I soon realized that the more you used them, the more they would wear out. Now they were still in pretty good shape when I was doing this, but I realized that over the years, if I kept doing this, the molds would be useless. So I started making copies of the molds so that I could reproduce the pieces that my ancestors made. And the one was a picture frame, the lost art that I was talking about earlier, the hunt scenes with dog handles and stick handles, and some of them actually have Solomon Bell on the bottom of them. So it was just one of those things that I had to, if I wanted to keep using the molds, I had to make copies, and that was a process because I had no idea what I was doing. It was, I knew I had to use a release agent so that I wouldn't have a glob of plaster Paris with my mold inside it. Right. So it's.
Well, tell us a little bit about your pottery that you're creating now.
Well, it's I'm doing a little bit on the wheel. I'm making banks, but most of what I'm doing is the molds and the dogs. I have two dogs, the right and left, and I have the original Staffordshire dogs that the molds were made from. And same way with the other pictures that I have. But molds have to be, as I do each mold, I have to sort of recondition them to get the detail back in them. So I have laid in bed at night and thought, boy, if Granddaddy could see me now, and what I could learn from him. Because he was a master potter. In fact, virtually all the Bells were master potters. But Granddaddy was real good at mold making also, which that was a little different from the rest of the potters. Right. One thing about giving the pottery to the Renfield is that I dearly wanted the pottery the collection to be seen as a whole. And I didn't want it sold off. And when you all agreed to that, I was just beside myself. I got really emotional when Laura, she pulled the article that was that the reporter up here did, and I almost had tears. I was so happy. Because you all was going to do exactly what I wanted, and my collection wouldn't be sitting on a wall or packed away in my house, and so people could actually get to see it. And I've been told by a number of people, "You gave that away?" I said, "Yeah," and they just sort of shook their head because they figured I should have sold it and taken the money to the bank, and that's not what I wanted. I thank you all, and I really appreciate what you all are doing. So.